Stretching from Key West to Kendall, the 26th Congressional District is home to one of the most closely watched congressional races in the country. Democrats believe winning the seat currently held by Republican Carlos Curbelo is critical to their effort to take control of the House. And the Democrat hoping to win that seat, Debbie Murcaso-Powell, is joining me this morning. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, Jim, for having me.
I want to pick up on the conversation I was just having, just a few moments ago with the Miami City manager, who was former head of immigration during the Bush administration. Let's talk about immigration. Let's specifically start with ICE. A number of Democratic candidates running this year have called for ICE to be abolished. Do you call for ICE to be abolished?
I think that the problem here is Trump, the president, and his policies. And I am, as an immigrant myself, extremely concerned about the actions that ICE has taken. I mean, I know that the director of ICE has warned immigrants to be looking over their shoulders, stalking bus stops and other areas. So I'm definitely concerned, but they're following clear instructions from the president. They need to be focusing, instead of harassing immigrant communities, they need to really be focusing on what the city manager was mentioning, which is human trafficking, which there's a huge problem with that in this country, and that's where they need to be focusing their efforts. But I don't want to take the responsibility away from this administration and the divisive policies that they've instilled, especially with immigration, in regards to immigration.
So let's talk about immigration more generally. Carlos Curbelo has generally been given good marks for attempting to shepherd through a bill through the House of Representatives to solve some of the immigration problems, to give a pathway to citizenship for the DACA kids. What makes you think that if you were in the House and the Democrats were in charge, that you would be able to do any better?
Well, Jim, very good question. And I have to tell you that my frustration with this congressman is that he says a lot of things here, says that he's trying to do a lot of things, but I don't really see a lot of action. There was a bill that I keep mentioning, that there was an opportunity to pass a Clean Dream Act back in December, where it had more than 200 co-sponsors. Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Layton actually signed on to that bill, and Curbelo didn't at the time. I know that he recently did, as we were getting closer to election. He then spoke about pushing and standing up to his party, pushing a discharge petition, but then, because he was short 2 votes, completely caved into the leadership. He's been giving thousands of dollars to Republicans who are hardliner, anti-immigration officials. I mean, they're completely against any sort of immigration reform, yet his own personal PAC, he's been giving money to these Republicans. He caved into the leadership in Congress, knowing very well and knowing the background that they are not interested in finding a fix for this problem.
Why do you believe the PAC that he created was to try to promote immigration reform? He has given money to hardline Republicans who were opposed to immigration reform. Why do you believe he did that then?
I believe, from seeing the actions, and I'm just bringing truth to light, from seeing all the actions that I've seen from Congressman Curbelo, he says one thing but goes to D.C. and does something else. So he, says that he's for immigration reform, yet lets his party make the decisions instead of really truly working in a bipartisan form, which is what we need to do so that we can find a solution. So what he's doing is not really standing up for his community, and that's my frustration when I see
let's talk about
talking about these issues.
Well, let's talk about another issue, the economy. There was an excellent jobs report, 213,000 jobs added to the economy. The current administration heralds that as showing that unemployment rate is very low level. The economy seems to be doing well. Isn't that an issue alone that you could say Republicans should remain in charge because the economy is headed in the right direction?
Absolutely not, and I'll tell you why. I think that we are seeing growth in the economy because of the policies that we saw under the Obama administration, and we're still seeing the effects of that. This is not under the Trump administration. And what I'm very concerned about is that the more families that I talk to, the more people that I talk to, they are struggling. They're not making ends meet. So the economy jobs report looks good, but wages are still at the same level as they were 2-3 years ago.
Wages have not been really going up. Right.
Exactly. So we see costs of goods and services,
gasoline.
Gas prices have gone up. Now with these tariffs that we're going to be discussing, that's going to affect the cost of a lot of goods and services that we depend on as consumers. So who's benefiting from this economy right now?
Let's talk about the trade war with China. You represent, or are hoping to represent, a district that would include the Florida Keys. The Keys commercial fishermen, we're going to do a story on that in a second, could be severely adversely affected by these trade tariffs. What is your position when it comes to these tariffs that the Trump administration is imposing on China?
Again, it's, what I'm seeing is one person, one man making these unilateral decisions that are going to affect our economy in a very drastic way. He is escalating a trade conflict with our allies, with Canada, Mexico, now China, that we're all ultimately going to be paying the consequences. And the fisheries in Monroe County are still recuperating from Hurricane Irma. They lost millions of dollars due to the hurricane, and they really haven't seen a lot of relief coming from the federal or state government at this point. So this is going to affect them directly. It's an industry that brings about $50 million to Monroe County, and so I'm extremely concerned about what that's going to do to the industry.
You were referring to President Trump as the person who's behind this.
Yeah.
I got a statement from Congressman Curbelo about this. He said he's also disappointed by the new tariffs and thinks that they don't show, the right vision in terms of the Trump administration. Should have expected this. So he's disappointed. You're disappointed. What would you do anything different than what he's doing right now?
Look, Congress has the power to do something. Let's be clear about that. The problem is that the Republicans are not standing up to Trump. They're not. We have to have, I think it's a 2/3 majority to be able to override a veto right by the president. So there is something that Congress could do. And I assure you that the Democrats would get together to try to do something. And that's why it's so important to elect Democrats in November.
Well, I'm curious, if Democrats are elected and take over the House and you are in the House, will you vote for Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker?
I've been asked that question over and over again, and I've said it time and time again. Whoever I vote for has to be aligned with the values of my community. That's going to be my ultimate decision-making process. I have seen Nancy Pelosi come down to Florida. I have seen her fight for health care accessibility and lowering health care costs. I have seen her stand up for dreamers. So my answer is yes, I would support her.
We have just about 45 seconds. You mentioned health care. Talk to me about where you would differ from Congressman Curbelo on health care.
I would not have voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act in a district which depends, we have the second largest number of people that depend on the ACA in this district, over 100,000 families. What I would do is protect what we have, look at ways to improve that, lower costs, and provide more accessibility to everyone in the district.
Debbie Recalso-Powell, thank you very much for coming in. I should note that we are working to try to get Congressman Curbelo to come on this show. He has an open invitation. Anytime he wants to come in, he can sit here. We'll give him the entire half hour to talk about the issues. Hopefully he'll take us up on it. Up next, the trade war with China hits the lobstermen of the Florida Keys.